An exploration of self-discovery and human understanding was how the seminal work of indigenous leader Dr. Jackie Huggins was described when it was first published in 1998, and a new edition 23 years later continues that exploration.
A strong advocate for reconciliation over numerous decades, Auntie Jackie Huggins' release of Sister Girls also explores a contemporary view of history, values and struggles of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. From the Bidjara, Birragubba and Jura nations, Dr. Jackie Huggins joins us now. Good morning and welcome to Weekend Breakfast.
Watamuli Dan and Joe as well.
23 years in the making since the first publication of this book. Why now?
Why now? Because I think it's about time. I think in the early days, the writings around the 80s and the 90s of when I started, they weren't received, I don't believe, in the way that they should have been. And my Sister Girl book, which in those days had a cover with me with black hair, much the same jewellery, because I love jewellery and beads and earrings. But now I think is a time of very prolific indigenous writing in this country. And I'm really proud to say that, you know, I'm one of those writers that has been around for a while, but, you know, joined the stable of great, young, sophisticated, very intelligent and very smart writers around the country.
We'll get to some of the new chapters in a moment, but you've also kept many of the chapters that you've spoken about, actually quite a bit about, around the treatment of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the bureaucracy, your own family's history, those connections to song and storylines. Why was it important to, while looking to the future and a contemporary view, also including all of those components that you had in your original book?
Well, I thought it was very important to show a time scale here, that really, in some ways things have changed and in others they haven't changed at all. So, you know, that span of over 20 years indicates a very long presence of the inability, I think, of governments, policymakers and decision makers to actually do anything that is really concrete in terms of the parity of our people and, you know, particularly around closing the gap as well. You know, the stuff that I wrote all those years ago still stands. And I wanted to keep the essence of Sister Girl contained within that, but to bring forward and to bring a bit of light onto the subject of, you know, what's happening here in contemporary times. And because of my work experience, the work that I've done throughout the years in reconciliation and National Congress particularly, the review of ATSIC, you know, there's been a whole lot of highlights that, you know, I wish to talk about and to bring them forth because, you know, there were very few people, and still to this day, I think, writing about those subjects that need to be so encompassed and so put out there in the Australian community, not only Australian, but the international community as well. So it was very important for me to preserve the nature of the foundations of Sister Girl, number one, I suppose, and to bring it forward in the light that it has, to look at, you know, perhaps the changes, but also to say we're still stuck in various situations that we have been for many decades.
There are two new components, or two major new components to the book. I want to get on to the chapter about Auntie in a moment, but you've also got a chapter that's a transcript of an ABC radio conversation that you had with the late Bell Hooks from 1994. We've actually got a bit of a clip of that. Here it is.
When I first learned about Australian Aborigines as a girl, I learned about them from Mills and Boon's romances. It says a lot about how much we've changed, that I can actually be talking to Jackie as two women of consciousness, two black revolutionary women that I think we have to also look at how far we've come, even as we acknowledge how far we have to go, because that's where the hope lies. I mean, for me, it's exciting. This moment tonight is exciting because it's a moment of solidarity. I mean, I've been telling everybody that I was going to have this conversation with Jackie, and because it meant so much to me as a sign of black self-determination.
Absolutely, I agree with that, Bill. And I've told you this before, a great fan of yours from way back. I think that your writings and the stuff you have to say about feminism and racism is so important to all black women in this world. And believe me, I'm as excited about this as you are.
Tell me about hearing that back.
Oh, wow. Dan, that's a treasure. It really is. And, you know, when she passed, I felt that I'd lost someone from my own family, in fact, someone who was a great mentor. And the greatest compliment that she gave me, that, you know, I was a black woman revolutionary in those days, and I still consider myself to be one, of course. But what a woman, what a woman.
Well, women of consciousness was the term that she used, and I think that that's pretty apt. We're almost out of time, but I want to go to the other new chapter, which is called Don't Call Me Auntie. Now, I call you Auntie, and I have for many years because I see you as an elder and leader figure for me. But for those who aren't familiar, what does that term Auntie mean?
Look, basically, Auntie is a term of affection and endearment. I mean, my mother loved being called Auntie, and so do other Aboriginal women. But for me personally, it's a term by which it is based on kinship, family, community and mob. And I really prefer that our own mob call us Auntie. And that's my take on it, because, you know, I get very annoyed and agitated that, you know, young white public servants, when I go into a meeting, will automatically call me Auntie. And really that's not on. I think you need to ask permission first and ask, what is your preference? How do you wish to be referred to? And I think once that's addressed, then we can get on with it.
Yeah, about having those respectful relationships. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been really wonderful to yarn about your new take on your old book, Sister Girl. Dr. Jackie Huggins, thank you.
Thank you very much.